Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Vito Fossella. I'm, as you can see, surrounded by a bunch of like-minded people here who are basically opposed to a migrant shelter being placed in the church behind us. As we've been saying for almost 2 years, Staten Island did not create an open border policy that allowed people by the millions to flood across the border and then come to a place like New York City and get free room and board indefinitely, food, etc., for health care. And we've been trying to fight it since day one. We sued in Richmond County Court. We actually won a decision that said there was no such thing as a right to shelter law or a constitutional mandate. So all the things that are being done to, really compromise and destroy a beautiful neighborhood here where people invest their life savings, not only their homes, but their businesses and their friendships and their neighbors. And then the city comes along and says, we're going to put 15 migrants right in your basement. In addition, recently, led by the Congresswoman and supported by, I think, every elected official on Staten Island, we believe that the church is in violation of the New York City Building Code for a number of reasons. But, if you did it, the city would have you shut down in 5 minutes. But for some reason, when they want to do it, you can keep it uninterrupted. And once again, instead of making things better for the people of Port Richmond, instead of making things better for the people of Staten Island, these things make things worse. We're not even talking about what we see almost every day, the tragedies around the country, where young migrant men who come here illegally brutally beat, rape, and murder young girls. So anybody who wants to have their young girl walking up and down the street, knowing in advance that a young migrant person who came here illegally is going to be roaming the streets, is insane. It's got to stop. We were supposed to be joined here by the NAACP. We got confirmation last night that they would be here. We just reached out and we're told that they're not coming. That's fine. Nevertheless, we have a lot of great people who are working united and in unison with one voice to say that this thing should stop. They should not allow this migrant shelter to open. The church really should do the right thing at this point and say no. We were told last week that they've been negotiating. The city was negotiating, I believe, for 4 months. And we were notified literally a day or two before this thing was slated to open. So clearly, there's a lack of transparency. The people of Staten Island deserve better. They deserve more. And we are standing here on behalf of the people of Port Richmond, and by extension, you'll hear from a lot of elected officials and their representatives across Staten Island to say enough is enough. And with that, our partner at the State Senate, who's helping us lead the charge as well, is Senator Jessica Scarcella-Spenton.
Thank you so much. I'm proud to stand here with our elected colleagues and Staten Island residents. If you look behind us, you will see people who actually live here in this community who would be impacted by this behind us. Once again, we heard about this from a source other than the city when we knew that they had this plan. As the borough president pointed out, for 4 months they were negotiating this, and we got a late night text saying that this was going to come to fruition. We have amazing community partners like Port Richmond Strong who do everything in their power to make sure that this neighborhood is a beautiful and vibrant place to live. I don't live far from here, maybe 3 minutes down the road. This is the wrong plan. This is the wrong place. Once again, the city has failed at letting the people who live here know with no community input. Nobody knew what was happening, and this was done in the quiet of the night. This site needs to be shut down, and the city needs to cut off this unsustainable problem that they keep perpetuating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. And as she mentioned, and we mentioned last time we were here, there are people, Port Richmond Strong, North Shore Alliance, community board members, civic leaders, and we have other civic associations here because we stand united. They get up every day and they say, how can we make Port Richmond a little better place? To raise a family, to go to a restaurant, to go to a store, to shop. And yet, despite their best efforts, the city comes along and says, we're going to make it a little worse. And as you can see, this is a Democrat and Republican bipartisan effort, and a strong voice in the State Assembly is Sam Perazzolo. Someone?
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I too want to point out that take a look at the crowd of people that we have here. These are community residents. These are people who have lived in Port Richmond for a long time. They live here now, and they want to see Port Richmond go on and prosper. Port Richmond is at a precipice. It was the jewel of Staten Island at one time, and it kind of went downhill, and now it's on its way back up. And just like every community on its way back up, just when things are getting good, the city says, here, let's do something that's going to hurt you. So let me talk about this. $4.2 billion. New York State has dedicated $4.2 billion to the illegal migrant crisis. The problem that I have with that, or not so much this shelter, but every shelter, is any illegal shelter, any illegal that is allowed into this country who jumps the line over people who are doing the process legally is wrong. $4.2 billion pays for a lot of immigration attorneys. Instead of having people come here, live illegally, they rob from our stores, they kill our citizens. I mean, you know, you might say that it's a little hyperbolic for me to say something like that, but look at the headlines that are going on. So I think if the government were to spend money to help these people come here legally so they could participate in our country, in jobs, that would be the right thing to do. They're inviting these people to come to New York City. The mayor was down in Texas with his yellow flyer saying, come to New York City, and now there's nothing that they can do. So what do? They turn to a life of crime and violence. So even though Port Richmond is neighboring to my district, is not my district, I'm here just like I've been at every other migrant shelter there have been, just like Senator Scarcella has been, and just like the borough president has been. This is Staten Island. We are an island of one. We all come together when someone is in need. And right now, Port Richmond is in need. There is no way it can be legal to house 15 migrants in the basement of this church with one bathroom. I'm sure there are no fire suppression systems. There might not be another access for exiting if there's a problem. Which brings me to my last point, is the city of yes. Today, we can stand here and we can fight this shelter. The city wants to pass the city of yes, which is going to change zoning laws. Last night at the civics meeting, people were saying, well, can the Department of Buildings just shut this down because it's against the C of O? The Department of Buildings will do whatever the city tells them to do, regardless of the C of O. It's the firefighters that will wind up shutting this down. But when the city of yes goes through, what that's going to allow is for something like this to come in as a matter of course. It's going to allow for basement apartments. It's going to allow for you to build a shed in your backyard that you can house people. It's going to allow for 6-story buildings in residential areas. So we all need to band together, and that's what you see here. You see community officials, you see elected officials from both sides of the aisle, you see different organizations and different groups, and we're saying no to the mayor for putting this shelter here, anywhere else on Staten Island, or anywhere else in New York City. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's well said, and just be loud and clear and unequivocal. With respect to the city of yes, we are clearly the borough of no. We appreciate what we have here. We love what we have here. And once again, we don't need people to make things worse. And that's what the city of yes will do in its current form for the people of Staten Island. I know a lot of elected officials wanted to be here, but they had conflicts. One of them was Councilmember Hanks, who was just with. Is Antoine here? Okay. From Councilmember Borelli's office, we have Frank. Frank, do you want to say a few words? Thank you.
Good morning, thank you. I grew up on the South Shore, and over the years, recently I got married, and my in-laws live just a few blocks away. So I've been spending a lot more time here on the North Shore, and I've gotten to know the community a lot better. And this community doesn't deserve this. Just before we started, this young man over here grabbed the microphone and started singing the Star Spangled Banner. That's the type of people that live in this community. They don't deserve this. I'm going to step aside because I'd rather you hear from the people that do live here, but this is not right, and they don't deserve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. From Congresswoman Maliataka's office, Carol. Lily.
Hi, I just want to let you know that Congresswoman is always happy to join this bipartisan group of elected officials and her constituents in doing what's right for this borough, for our city, and our nation. So you can always depend on her office to work together with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. From Councilman Carr's office, Giuseppe.
Good afternoon and good morning. It's no surprise we're here 9 days later. Staten Island elected officials are going to call something out when something's wrong. And the fact is that putting a migrant shelter here is wrong. The people of Port Richmond don't want it. Port Richmond Strong is here. The people in Travis don't want it, and there's a migrant shelter there. The people of Rosebank and Aricard didn't want St. John Villa, and the Staten Island elected officials fought that. So the fact is that this shelter shouldn't be here. It's a quality of life issue, and as the borough president alluded to, it's a safety issue. Look what's happening to these young women. Look what's happening to our police officers. So I just have to commend the borough president Fossella, Congresswoman Maliatakis, and our elected officials for keeping the pressure on and keeping this fight against the city. So thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Any other representatives? Any other representatives from elected officials who are here? Okay. He spoke last week, last time we were here, and once again he's going to say a few words from Port Richmond North Shore Alliance, James Smith. Okay.
I'm here to speak for North Shore Alliance. Mario Bonviaggio is doing a phenomenal job after we lost Mary Bullock. What I'm saying is, after last week's event concerning Faith Methodist Church being used as a shelter, the community is finally waking up to the fact that there are those who want to take advantage of it. I attended a meeting where the spokesperson for an unknown group wouldn't even state where he has been in the last few years and what success rate he had to point out. He will simply move on, but we will remain here as Port Richmond residents who have been here for generations. What we are facing is a deterioration which took years to build. The Port Richmond Library right down the street, after a $20 million renovation, will probably not open due to budget cuts in the city and the lack of a librarian. The CYO is closed to the youth of Staten Island, is now a food pantry, one of 6 within the 8-block area. And Faber Pool, which is a gem of a recreational facility, has limited use due to the lack of lifeguards. This is a community where Langston Hughes, one of the members of the Harlem Renaissance, would come to on Saturday night after working all week on a farm in New Springville. He would write about it in one of his stories. The story was On My Own, about the joy he found in being in Port Richmond. Edwin Markham, the American poet, donated books to the Port Richmond Library, while him and his wife spent Saturdays in that library. There are countless others who contribute to the advancement of Port Richmond. Today we see many social service agencies coming to Staten Island and profiting from others' misfortunes. Again, who are these people? They are not Edward Markham, they are not Langston Hughes. What they really are is poverty profiteers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. James, how long have you lived in Port Richmond? 77 years?
4 years.
4 years.
77
7 years. 77-year resident, right? So that's the heart and soul of this community right there, and speaking from the heart. And you know what we talk about, Sam talked about it, the Senator James, about funding. Money's fungible, right? When we asked almost 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, what the migrant crisis would cost, we asked officially from the Independent Budget Office. We got a number back about $500 million, and we thought that was outrageous. Now they're on track to spend almost $12 billion. So $12 billion has to come from something. And it comes from the fact that the library may not open on time. It comes from the fact that the MTA is looking for $1 billion. So it's coming from all of us. And that's one of the reasons why we're here to stop it. And there are folks here from other civic associations who came, and they've always been there over the decades, like people from Westerly and South Beach Civic was here. If any of you like to say a few words, feel free. But I thought maybe the person impacted most by all this is somebody who lives right down the block. And Nicole, who lives down the block on Jewett, wants to say a few words. Nicole, come forward, please.
Thank you. When I first moved out to Port Richmond around 10 years ago, I was told that it was such like an amazing place a long time ago, that it was the shopping district and it was just had amazing quality of life. That is not really what I've been experiencing the last 10 years. So, but they are doing so much better to build it up. So to have this shelter be placed here is really not a great idea. It doesn't help fix the issues that are going on inside of this community. There are too many children's parks and children's places, and this is actually where I like to bike ride with my kids, rollerblade with my kids all the time. We stay away from the park currently down the block already because it's usually just filled with grown single men. I'm not comfortable letting my kids outside. Even at 10 and 11 years old, you would think that you would have the option to let your kids play outside of your home and maybe ride their bike and stuff like that. But I can't even do that. I have to watch them every second. I got to be there every second because there's always something happening and there's always strange, sometimes people walking around doing weird things. I'm very against this shelter coming here. I feel like New York City has just sat around placing shelter with no recourse. You know, even if to stick these people here for 4 months, what's going to happen after 4 months and where are they going to be going? So I'm totally opposed to this migrant shelter. I don't think this community needs it. It's an up and coming community, bringing back where it once was before. And it's the last thing that this community needs. You know, I would feel unsafe. I imagine people feel unsafe already sometimes, and it's just not something. I've been raising my kids here for 10 years. They've been raised in this community. They love this community. They love Port Richmond. They love walking around. They love the open streets. But definitely still against this migrant shelter. They're going to have to come up with a better idea. Thank you.
Spoken like a true good mother. Thank you, Nicole, very much. Is there anybody else who would like to share a few words? Anybody? Going once? Living Beach is here. Anybody? Well, we're just told that now one representative from the NAACP is on her way. Do we know how long? Huh?
Yeah, she lives on Simonton.
Okay. Do you want to bring the kid back up to sing the Star Spangled Banner again?
Let's go, yeah.
It'll clear the crowd. I'm not trying to do that.
Okay. This is your day to shine, young man. What's his name, sir? Giovanni. All right, Giovanni, go ahead, knock it out. Yeah, I think, well, so we're approaching this from several different fronts, as you can see. Several different approaches. One, just the clarion call to say that this community and the community as a whole does not want this or support this. That's number one. We would hope that the city would listen and say, you know what, we're jamming something down a community's throat that they do not want. Perhaps we should take a step back and put them some. There are communities around the city that want these migrant shelters. Put them there. That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned, we are looking at whether this is in violation, among other things, New York City Building Code. If somebody else has a house and they want to put 15 people in the basement, they cannot do that. They can't do it. So we're thinking that we're asserting is that the city's in violation of its own building code, and they should revisit and send out inspectors. And that's in a way what happened at St. John Villa. When we actually won the lawsuit, the decision that eviscerated the whole concept of right to shelter, around that same time, the fire department inspected the premises and determined that it was unsafe for anybody, which is when the city ultimately pulled back, right? And the third is that maybe people who are associated with this church, they've been good neighbors, and I'm sure they're very noble, they have noble intentions, and they serve this community in a lot of different ways, many of them positive. Perhaps the church leaders should go to the city and say, we made a mistake. We made a mistake and this is wrong. We value everybody who lives around here. We value the Diudo family. We value Nicole. We value the Civic Association, and we made a mistake, and we ask that you allow us to walk away from this contract. So if anybody else has something to say, Sam, Jessica?
That's it. I have a question. From what I understand, these migrants will only be permitted to be here from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. What happens to them from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
I have no clue. Yeah, I have no clue, and I don't trust it anyway. I mean, they can say whatever they want. But I think that the fact that these folks came here, let's go just back, I hate to bore people, but if you remember 2 years ago, they were seeking asylum from oppression in Venezuela. Now you go to the Texas border, the Arizona border, they're coming from everywhere just to say we're here. Every day there's reports that people are providing misleading applications, information, blatantly not true. And now these are the people that we're bending over backwards to accommodate. They come here illegally from the get-go, and then we all have to come together on a beautiful summer day when they should be doing something productive to say we don't want it. So I have no clue what they would be doing from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and I wouldn't trust anybody who tells me they would do A, B, or C for that matter. Okay, is Jasmine coming? 2 minutes away. Yes.
Can I ask you something? I know that Jimmy Otto is commissioner of the buildings department, right? And he was in your job for 2
Yeah.
terms. Yeah. I'm sure at that point he would have supported us. Where's his stance on this now?
I have not spoken with the commissioner on this, so I don't know.
And the fact that also, I live on Everton Avenue, I've been here for 40 years. If somebody looked at the stats, Port Richmond and a number of other North Shore communities have done their share of having social services, more than their share.
Oh, yeah.
Than any other neighborhoods on Staten Island. And it just seems to me that it's enough already now. We're doing our share to help as much as we can. It should be, the burden should be more spread out. Not
You're
just focused
absolutely
on
right.
a
This
couple of
neighborhood is
communities.
saturated with
Yes,
social service
yes.
agents.
Even within 2 blocks of here, I could name like a half a dozen social services that we have.
I'm not even turning you.
Do you want to say?
Oversaturated, yes.
No, I just want to say you're completely right in that assessment. And again, this is about if you're engaging the communities, not just on, specific to Staten Island, but across New York City as a whole, if those communities are engaged, to the borough president's point, there are communities that are willing to take this on in other boroughs. This is not one of them. It's extremely residential. And you're right, this area already does have a tremendous amount of social services. To add to the issue is only going to actually burden those organizations as well that are already overburdened. So thank you.
And part of it is you take away the funding stream for some of these groups, those groups go away. That's a good chunk of this is all about the money.
It's all about the money.
What kind of engagement have either of your offices had with the leadership of the church? It sounds like somebody just drove by asking to get off the property.
A little ironic that people who have lived in this community for 77 years, who are trying to represent this community, we're told to get off, but undocumented illegal aliens are allowed in. A little bizarre, but listen, we're all adults, people made decisions. What we're encouraging them and respectfully doing, and Paul, you've been at all of these, you've seen we have not changed our tune. We just think these are wrong. And the reason why we're here as neighbors, because Nicole is here, I go back to Diutas, and David Carr said it last time, we don't want them next to anybody's house. We do not want them next to anybody's house. We wouldn't want them next to our house. So our job is to fight for people who feel that they're just being rolled over, and frankly, they are. So we have to do our best. And we would hope publicly that the church leadership, and I think the council member spoke last time, Councilmember Hanks, about it. We would hope that they would do the right thing. And coming down the sidewalk is Jasmine. Come on, Jasmine.
Hey. My name is Jasmine Jazzy Robinson. I am with the Staten Island NAACP. President Josie is on his way. We had a little bit of a hiccup, but we stand in solidarity with the rest of the elected officials. But our concern is this: we have no gripes with the church. We have no gripes with asylum seekers because they're trying to find a better life, which we all are trying to do here. But in the same regards, a late night text is woefully problematic. We wish this was done in a better spirit, a unity with the community, and that wasn't done. Again, we should not be warehousing people. We should be housing people with dignity, whether they're asylum seekers or not. The Port Richmond community is oversaturated. The Port Richmond community, is a vibrant working class community. And we definitely need to respect the working class community of the North Shore, but in particularly Port Richmond. I lived here for 20 plus years, and this is my home. I love it here. And when you think about Port Richmond, I'm Port Richmond. We're all Port Richmond. We're Port Richmond. And this is not right. And we need to do what we need to do to ensure that all of our voices are heard, that we're met with dignity and respect. Again, warehousing people is not the solution. Living in a basement, and then what's also concerning is the rotation of this. We don't know how long this is going to be. And again, you know, it's about the safety of the community. This is not NEMNI. This has nothing to do with not in my backyard. Our backyard is oversaturated. So we need to fix our backyard before we take on anything else. So that's our point here. Again, the NAACP does not have any gripes or any issues with the church, because the church does a lot of good work in the community. We taken a stance against how this was done, with no kind of community involvement, with no kind of community say so. So that is our issue, that is our position, but we are willing to work with the elected officials and also with community stakeholders to make the situation better. But again, we should not be oversaturating a community like Port Richmond, and to just give us such short notice is woefully problematic. Again, this is my neighborhood, this is all of our neighborhoods, and we should take pride in our neighborhoods, and you know who's coming to our neighborhoods. So again, we stand in solidarity with the rest of the elected officials, but more importantly, we stand in solidarity with the rest of the Port Richmond community that know that this is wrong, and how this was done was wrong, and it was not right. If this is called getting stuff done, this is not it. This is not how you get stuff done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very much, Jazz. Appreciate it. And please tell Ed we said get well soon. And you know, this is, instead of focusing on the negative, accentuating the negative, people should be talking about coming to Port Richmond and going down Port Richmond Avenue, the great restaurants that are popping up, the stores, Danino's, Ralph's. These are traditions that go back generations, as James said. People from all over Staten Island used to come and celebrate. And here we are for a very bad reason. I can't say strong enough how everybody on Staten Island, almost everybody on Staten Island, I think if they were here would be saying the same thing. Any questions from anybody? Anybody else? James?
One thing I had left out, when that man, Mr. Whoever his name is, he goes by 5 different names. I said, what happens to these people from 7A to 7P if one doesn't feel well? He said, well, we'll give them a Metro card. I said, what if he doesn't kind of want a Metro card? Well, we'll call him an Uber. They send this person then to Manhattan, to a place called a hospitality center. Every other borough has these hospitality centers set up by this group. And you need 10 of these shelters in a borough to create a hospitality center. So this is just the first. He's not only looking at this, he's looking for other places. And once you get a hospitality center, that's 24/7. So I'm not criticizing the people who need these things. It's just the oversaturation and the duplicity of the people who are setting them up. And it's, again, follow the money.
Yes.
Thank you, James.
Good point.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.